Lupo recently released a 300 watt bicolored cob LED. The catch is it doesn't actually use up to 300 watts of power. So the question is, should you get the Lupo or should you consider the Aputure 300x? Let's find out. Hey everybody, Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker here, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. I want to thank Lupo for sending this light out to me so I can provide you with my review today. It is a short one, so let's get started. Coming in at $1,000, this is a dual color panel. It's primarily made out of a technopolymer plastic, which might have you guys scratching your head. Why? Well, basically, if you take an aluminum chassis and you keep hitting it with a hammer, eventually it's going to keep denting and denting and get weaker over time. Versus a technopolymer plastic, it doesn't keep caving in. So, depends on what camp you're from. I think it's perfectly fine based on how it's made. Now, the power ballast is actually built into the light, so you don't have a big old power brick hanging off your lights, which is definitely awesome to make things nice and easy when you are transporting and setting up on set. In terms of power output, with the 300 in its name, you're going to assume that it's like a 300 watt LED. However, that is not the case because in the very front of it is this little fresnel attachment, which basically means it's taking the light and it's focusing in, and the center of the light is where it's going to be the brightest, and then it kind of tapers off to the sides as you can see here. But otherwise, here are my measurements from 6 feet away. Looking at the output test, my camera settings are always up top, we see that from 6 feet away, we have plenty of wiggle room to get exposure with your low to middle grade level chips as we see on the color checker chart. It's definitely enough for you to throw some diffusion curtains or softbox in front of it and still have enough power. Now looking at the color checker chart, again, I only dial in the Kelvin instead of doing a custom white balance, we see that the daylight is really good and pretty much par for the course when it comes to other LEDs. Now the tungsten does seem to lean towards blue a little bit, and this is easily adjusted on the light itself. Instead of using 3200K, just know that maybe you need to go down to 3000K to get around that tungsten level. Now here is the interesting bit between 18 kilohertz and 25 kilohertz mode. When you are in 25 kilohertz mode in daylight, you see a decent jump in output as you can see here. However, if I flip between the color accurate 18 kilohertz and the 25 kilohertz, you can see that the color on the 25 kilohertz is not accurate at all as it moves everything towards red. Now, is there any reason why you would want to use the 25 kilohertz mode? Yes, that is if you have basically a super slow-mo camera, super high frame rate, and you want your shutter speed incredibly high so that you don't get any motion blur in your slow-mo footage. Long story short, if you look at LED Christmas lights, you need to shoot at 1/60th of a shutter speed, otherwise you're going to get flickering in the background if they're in your background. So basically speaking, at 18 kilohertz, your shutter speed can go all the way up to 1/18,000th of a second before you start seeing anything weird. And same thing with 25 kilohertz, 1/25,000th of a second for a shutter speed before you see anything weird. So that's the only time you would ever use this mode. Now, I don't know if this is my model specifically, but if you are dimming anywhere from 30% to 70% on 18 kilohertz, you are going to hear this coil whining sound. When you're in 25 kilohertz mode, you don't hear it as much. And this kind of can be a problem depending on how close your light actually is. I don't know if I have a lemon or anything, but it is something that I want you guys to know. Now, Lupo does have a smartphone app that you can use to control the lights. However, it's really lacking in features right now, only really using sliders to control your color and brightness. I would like to see some presets in the future, and I'm sure those are coming. They just haven't developed the app yet. So the last thing I'm sure you guys are wondering is, okay, what about the Aputure 300x versus the Lupo? Because they're about the same price. Well, the long story short here is, I feel like the Lupo does much better in a studio environment where it's going to be up on the grid, on combo stands, and it doesn't leave the studio. Aputure, on the other hand, yes, it can be used in this fashion, but I feel like it does much better on location based on its design, and also because of the Bowen's attachment modifiers. With the Lupo, because you already have the Fresnel lens in front of it, sure, you can put it into a parabolic softbox or one of those reflector softboxes. Those are fine. If you want to use a Fresnel attachment, the ones made by Prolicht and Nanlite will work. The ones made by Aputure will not. And this is mainly because each design accounts for a different distance from the LED, and it just so happens that the Nanlite and the Prolicht are where it needs to be. And hey, that is it for this week, everybody. I do have some purchase links down below should you want to use them. If you do, it does directly help support this channel so I can continue testing and reviewing more products for you. Otherwise, if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave it down below. I will get to them as fast as I can. And until then, like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you guys in the next one.